A girl had a can of soda poured all over her in the middle of the office, laughed at like a joke, while no one bothered to step in. No one knew she was the wife of the man who owned the entire building. And when that man walked in, no one in that room could meet their own reflection again. She didn't cry. She didn't fight back. She simply stood up, gently brushed the stain off her shirt, and said one sentence that brought the entire system to a halt: "I've endured enough." They thought she was just ordinary, but she was living proof that the quietest people, when they finally rise, can make an entire office bow their heads. This is not a story for those who crave applause. It's for those who've been forgotten in a crowd and survived with their kindness intact. Are you ready? Because once the truth is called by its real name, there will be no silence left to hide behind. It all happened in under 30 seconds. The first sound was the sharp crack of a soda can being opened, cutting through the still air of an otherwise quiet office. Then came a soft but deliberate splat, a sound too casual to be an accident, as if someone had thrown contempt directly at her face without bothering to hide it. Ice-cold soda splashed onto Rachel Carter's chest, soaking the simple grey cardigan she always wore on Fridays. The sugary liquid dripped onto the floor, drop by drop, marking the moment like silent punctuation in a sentence of humiliation that could never be erased. "Oops," Jessica Hayes laughed in her shrill voice, still holding the now empty Coke can. "Thought you needed a shower. You're just so low class," someone gasped. But no one said a word. No one stepped forward. Rachel stood still, her body frozen from the soda-damp strands of hair clinging to her face, her shirt plastered to her skin. But she didn't scream. She didn't cry. She didn't ask why. She simply blinked twice, slowly, as if watching the world dissolve into a warped dream she couldn't wake up from. Mark Reynolds, the slick-haired salesman who looked like he washed his head with car wax, kicked hard at the leg of her desk, sending her chair tumbling backward. Rachel stumbled to stay upright. "This desk smells like garbage," he sneered, eyes glinting with mockery. "Maybe wash your purse before walking into a company like this, huh?" Lauren Kim, the always camera-ready designer who looked like she lived inside an Instagram filter, raised her phone. "This is gold, baby," she whispered, angling the camera toward Rachel, a drenched woman, and not a single word spoken. Between the scattered laughter, the clatter of keyboard keys, and the sterile white office lights overhead, Rachel wiped a streak of soda from her cheek. A small gesture, barely noticed, but if someone had been close enough, they would have seen her hand trembling. She looked up, not at Jessica, not at Mark, not even at Lauren. She looked further toward the tall glass windows at the end of the office, where the late afternoon sun poured through thin curtains, lighting up the hardwood floor. No one knew what Rachel was thinking, but her gaze, it didn't shatter, it was quiet, deep, like a lake just before the storm. And if anyone happened to catch it, they would have had to look away. A janitor walked by, paused. He looked at Rachel, then he bowed his head and kept sweeping, as if to say, "I saw it." Not everyone is blind. Rachel bent down and picked up the pen that had fallen from her hand. No one helped her up. No one offered a tissue, but she stood, without a single complaint, without a sigh, just a woman wet cold, humiliated, rising, with nothing left but the last pieces of her dignity. And somewhere small but real, something cracked inside the people who had been laughing. But to understand how a woman could still rise in a room this cruel, we must go back to the beginning, to when she first walked into this place, with a gentle smile, a hopeful gaze, and the simple belief, if I work hard and stay kind, they'll see me for my ability. When Rachel Carter received the acceptance email from Pinnacle Marketing, she cried alone in her small rented apartment. It was the first company to reply after nearly 30 job applications. A data analyst position, the exact field she'd loved since her university days. She didn't tell her husband right away. She wanted to wait until the contract was signed before saying anything, as a small gift to prove I can do this on my own, Nate. I don't need your name to get me through. Nathan Pierce, her husband, knew. He always knew. But he didn't say anything, only asked her, "Do you want me to drive you on your first day?" Rachel shook her head. "I want to go by myself, like everyone else." The first few weeks at Pinnacle weren't exactly smooth, but Rachel kept telling herself, everyone needs time to adjust to a new job. She didn't expect a warm welcome. She only hoped for a quiet seat, a proper desk, and a fair chance to do her job well. But then the small things began. On the first day, there was no chair for her. The conference room was short one seat, and everyone else was already seated except her. No one said anything. She stood behind a pillar nearby, taking notes on her phone, her hand going numb after nearly an hour of standing. She thought, they probably just haven't sorted everything out yet. I'm new. On the third day, the client's meeting schedule was changed, without anyone telling her. Rachel rushed to the meeting room, already 15 minutes late. Brian, the team leader, looked at her and simply said, "Next time, check the calendar more carefully." She blushed and nodded, but that night, she went back through her emails. There had been no notice of any change. In the second week, a colleague made a snide comment behind her back when she brought a home-cooked lunch. "The smell of this veggie soup is giving me middle school dorm flashbacks." Rachel smiled faintly, saying nothing. She knew it was said loud enough for her to hear. After one meeting, Rachel decided to send a private email to Brian. "Hi, I just wanted to follow up on the meeting schedule from the other day. I may have missed an email. I'd really appreciate any help in staying aligned with the team's timeline." Brian read it, but never replied. Rachel didn't tell Nathan. He was busy. She didn't want to burden him with small things. She thought, maybe I'm just not fast enough yet, still adjusting. Just hang in there a little longer, and it'll get better. But that little longer, it stretched into 3 more weeks, then 6. And with every passing day, Rachel's chair, though, finally, there still felt like a seat never meant to be hers. In the team, Jessica Hayes stood out. Tall, slim, with honey-brown waves, styled in that effortless chic way. Everything about her radiated belonging, her red Gucci stilettos, perfectly nude manicured nails, the way she walked as if the office hallway was her personal runway. Rachel didn't hate Jessica. In fact, she used to admire her. During the first team meeting, Jessica flashed her a polite smile and turned away, just like those boss girl characters you see in movies. But a few days later, when the team went out for lunch and Rachel stayed behind to finish a report, Jessica said to Mark and Lauren, just loud enough for her to hear, "She's probably saving every penny to make rent." The words were light as air, but enough to make the spoon in Rachel's hand tremble. On another day, Rachel wore a light gray knit dress, the simple kind she liked to wear when she wanted to look neat. Jessica passed by, paused, tilted her head, and studied her. Vintage or upcycled thrift find. She chuckled softly and walked away as if she'd just asked a friendly little question. Mark wasn't as subtle. He liked to call things out across the office. "Hey, Rachel, did you take the bus today? I saw someone who looked just like you, munching a sandwich at the bus stop." Some people chuckled. No one responded. As for Lauren, she photographed everything. Morning coffee, her laptop screen, even Rachel's shoes. One time, Rachel caught her zooming in on her shoes with her phone. Lauren didn't say anything. She just smiled, typed something for the caption, then accidentally pointed the camera back toward Rachel, who was quietly eating her mom's homemade lunch at her desk. Rachel didn't ask. She knew that if she did, it would instantly become, "Oh, Rachel, you're way too sensitive. We're just joking around. Lighten up." One late afternoon, while the team was discussing a presentation, Jessica suddenly slid a stack of documents across the table toward Rachel. "This one's the easy part. Can you take care of it for us? Excel's your specialty, right?" Her voice was as soft as a feather, but Rachel knew it was the task no one wanted. Rachel nodded. She always nodded. That night, when she got home, Nathan was sitting in his study, the warm amber light spilling softly onto his desk. He looked up and asked, "Was today okay?" She nodded, hung up her bag, and walked straight into the kitchen. He watched her back then, exhaled slowly. Not because she'd lied, but tonight, her nod came 2 seconds later than usual. The next morning, like every morning, Rachel arrived 30 minutes early, not to impress anyone. Just because at 8:00 a.m., the meeting room was still empty, the Wi-Fi wasn't overloaded, and no one paid her any attention. She sat in the corner near the power outlet, opened her laptop, and took a sip of coffee she'd brought from home. In those few brief minutes, she felt almost normal, almost like she belonged. But then, like a machine set to a schedule, the familiar faces walked in. Jessica, Mark, Lauren, and that small, safe space disappeared. Jessica sat down next to Rachel, crossed her legs, and began labeling everyone on the team with loud enough whispers for all to hear. "Brian's shirt is wrinkled. His wife must have finally left him. Mark's growing a beard. What is this, a casting call for street thugs?" Then her eyes landed on Rachel. "Love your cardigan, hon. Looks exactly like the kitchen rag I tossed out last week." No one laughed, but no one said anything either. Lauren even raised her phone and joked, "The group chat's low on content." "Hold on." Rachel said nothing. She just adjusted the edge of her laptop and kept typing as if she hadn't heard a thing. That evening, once she got home, Rachel decided to write an email to Human Resources. It wasn't long. It wasn't accusatory. "I just wanted to ask if the company has any policy to support new employees who may face difficulties integrating into the team. There have been a few situations I found awkward, and I'd appreciate the chance to speak up before making any wrong assumptions." She read it 3 times, then hit send. 1 day, 2 days, no response. By the 3rd week, she received a meeting invite from HR. Not for a conversation, but to attend a team-building workshop together with the very group that had been bullying her. At that workshop, Brian, the team lead, said, "I think this is all just a misunderstanding. Everyone has their own way of communicating. Rachel's a bit quiet, so sometimes people don't know what she's thinking." People laughed. Rachel laughed too, because if she didn't, they'd say she lacked team spirit. A few days later, while she was sitting alone in the cafeteria, Lauren walked by and dropped a small gift box on the table. "We got you something," she said brightly. Inside was a pair of old fuzzy socks, a used lipstick, and a note to the office princess. "Hope you blend in soon." That night, Rachel went into the kitchen late. She sat beside Nathan, who was reviewing documents, and thought about saying something, but didn't. He looked up and asked, "You okay?" She smiled. "I'm fine. Today was just a little long." Nathan nodded. He didn't press, but that night before bed, he placed a hand gently on her back and held it there for just a moment, as if to say, "I'm here, whether you tell me or not." Wednesday afternoon, the air in the office felt cold, like the AC had been set to the wrong mode. Rachel was reviewing data for the Q4 budget project when Brian, the team lead, walked out of the meeting room holding a stack of papers. "We've got a new potential client," he announced louder than usual. "But I need someone who's available to organize the spreadsheets and prep the supporting documents." No one responded. Then, almost like a rehearsed cue, Jessica turned and said Rachel's free right. She didn't wait for a reply. She slid the thick pile of paperwork across Rachel's desk. Rachel looked at the documents. It wasn't her task. It wasn't even part of her project. She looked up and said gently, "I have a deadline to submit the internal report to finance by 3. I'm afraid I won't be able to finish both on time." Jessica pressed her lips together, then turned to Mark and raised an eyebrow. She said no. Mark chuckled. "Our little finance princess has boundaries, huh?" Lauren murmured, "Just loud enough a princess in $20 shoes. Sounds like a bootleg fairy tale." Rachel tried to stay composed. She gripped her pen a little tighter and nodded. "I'll try my best to fit it in." Around 4 p.m., Rachel returned to her desk after photocopying. On her laptop screen was a new background. Someone had edited a photo of her face onto a cartoon body, holding a janitor's mop. No one stood nearby. No one laughed aloud. But everyone knew. As she was packing up at the end of the day, Brian walked past her desk and tossed a sticky note onto it. "Better start learning how things work around here, Carter. There's no room in this company for people who are too sensitive." Rachel picked up the note, crumpled it. She didn't throw it away. She slipped it into her pocket, and she knew she was nearing her limit. That evening, Rachel sat alone on the balcony. She didn't cry. She just closed her eyes for a very long time. Nathan stepped out behind her, carrying 2 cups of hot tea. "Do you want to talk?" he asked, no pressure in his voice. Rachel opened her eyes, looked at him, and shook her head. He nodded. "Then at least, let me sit with you." No more words. Just the two of them. One was silent because her pride had been worn thin. The other was silent because his love refused to intrude. But if Rachel didn't reach out to him soon, tomorrow might be the last day she could bear it. Friday morning. It was raining. Rachel arrived carrying a small umbrella, one shoulder of her coat soaked through. As she entered the office, she heard Lauren giggling with Mark behind the reception counter. They didn't greet her. No one had for a long time. On her desk, the coffee she had bought from her usual shop was still warm, but someone had swapped the lid. When she opened it, the smell of soy sauce rose sharply. Someone had poured it into her coffee. She didn't react, just quietly poured it down the sink. No shaking this time, just tired. At noon, the team was informed of a sudden meeting to discuss a client update. Rachel arrived a few minutes early, as always, but when she walked into the conference room, every chair was already taken, except for one that had been pulled out and flipped over onto the floor. Rachel stood still. No one looked at her. No one spoke. But everyone knew exactly who that chair was meant for. She started to step forward to pick it up, but just as she bent down, Mark brushed past behind her, accidentally bumping into her shoulder. Rachel lost balance and fell, her knee hitting the floor hard. Jessica, from inside the meeting room, turned with her phone in hand. "Oh no, the princess fell." She snapped a photo. "Should we call an ambulance?" The group laughed. Not loud, but enough for Rachel to hear and never forget. Brian appeared from behind, saw the scene. But instead of helping, he merely glanced and walked on, tossing out a cold remark. "If you can't keep your balance, maybe you should work from home. We need steady people here." Rachel forced herself to stand. A dirty stain ran down her skirt. Her knee burned, but her eyes stayed dry. She walked back to her desk, her hand gripping her phone inside her pocket. Part of her still wanted to wait to finish the day, the week to hang on until… But another part, the one awakened by the laughter in that meeting room, by the soy sauce in her coffee, by the overturned chair, was done waiting. And then, as if the universe had hit its own limit, a snap hissed behind her. Before she could turn, a cold stream of Coca-Cola slammed into her shoulder. The soda soaked through her blouse. The can clattered to the floor, its sound a final insult. Jessica laughed, her voice cutting like a cheap punchline from a bad sketch. Oops. Thought you needed a shower. You looked filthy anyway. Mark clapped. Lauren lifted her phone to record. No one stopped them. Rachel stood still. This time she didn't bow her head. She didn't wipe the stain. She turned and walked straight toward the break room. Not fast, not frantic, but every step felt like nails into the floor. She closed the door behind her, quietly, without a sound. Inside, Rachel unclipped her hair, wiped her face with a paper towel, and looked into the mirror. 1 second, 2 seconds. She pulled out her phone. For the first time in months of silence, she made a call. The name on the screen, Nathan. Her hand trembled slightly, but her voice, when the call connected, was surprisingly steady. And then 1 ring, 2 rings. Someone picked up. And from that very second, the story began to change. Nathan's voice came through low, calm, but instantly alert. He didn't ask, "What's wrong?" or "Why are you calling?" He knew. "Are you okay?" Rachel meant to say she was fine, like always. But this time, the words caught in her throat. She swallowed and gave a faint smile. Not really. There was a pause on the other end. Just a second. Then Nathan spoke slowly, but firmly. "I'm 15 minutes from leaving the office, but if you say you're not okay, I'll go right now." Rachel sat down in the chair by the window. She didn't want him to worry, but she also didn't want to keep holding this alone. "I don't need you to come here and make a scene. I just…" She took a deep breath. "I just don't know what to do anymore." Nathan's voice softened. "Can you tell me what happened?" Rachel began, briefly, without dramatizing. She told him about the overturned chair, the coffee filled with soy sauce, and Brian's note. She spoke with such evenness that even she found it strange. Nathan didn't interrupt. He didn't judge. He didn't ask for more than she gave. He just listened like he was standing right there, holding her hand and saying with his eyes, "I'm here. Keep talking." Finally, Rachel fell silent. A short pause. Then very quietly she said, "I don't know if I'm overreacting, but today I felt like I wasn't a person anymore, just a joke. Something passed around for others to laugh at." Nathan's reply was soft, but each word rang with steel. "No, Ra. You're not overreacting. You've been enduring far too much for far too long." He paused, then said slowly, clearly, "Stay right there. Don't leave the office. I'm coming." Before Rachel could protest, the call ended. She stared at the darkening screen. And for the first time in months, she felt like she could finally exhale fully. She didn't know what Nathan was going to do, but for the first time in all the days of being overlooked, humiliated, isolated, she wasn't alone anymore. When Rachel called, Nathan was on the 47th floor of Pierce Enterprises headquarters. He was in the middle of a strategy meeting for North American market expansion. But when the name Ra lit up on his screen, amid charts reports and cold executive handshakes, Nathan knew something was wrong. Not just because Rachel rarely called during working hours, but because the night before, when he asked, "Was today okay?" she nodded. But the nod came 2 seconds late, and it was lighter, like her neck was bearing the weight of something invisible. When she'd walked through the door, there had been a faint brown smudge on her shirt sleeve, not coffee, A scorched smell lingered like soy sauce dried onto fabric. Nathan noticed, but didn't ask. He simply put the kettle on the stove, stepped closer, and said softly, not as a demand, but an invitation. If you want to talk, I'm here. If not, just let me sit with you. Rachel chose to sit in silence. He didn't push, but he remembered. And this morning, as he left the house, Rachel said only one thing. Stay warm. It's windy out. No goodbye kiss. No question about whether he'd be home late. She just stood at the door, hand resting lightly on his shoulder, and watched him step into the elevator. That touch was soft, but Nathan knew she was holding on without wanting him to see how much she needed to. So when he heard her voice tremble on the phone, when he listened to her recount being shoved to the ground, the stifled laughter through a corporate speakerphone, when he imagined his wife-woman, who had done everything to ensure no one ever knew whose wife she was, now sitting alone in a foreign room with dried stains on her blouse. A flash of rage flickered in Nathan's eyes, cold and sharp like a blade. But it disappeared almost instantly, replaced by an unshakable resolve. He knew the time had come. No more standing behind. No more gently asking, "Are you okay?" It was time to stand in front. In every sense. Nathan stood up in the middle of the meeting. He didn't excuse himself. He didn't give a reason. He simply said, "The meeting's postponed. Something more important needs my attention." No one dared question it. He strode toward the elevator eyes, meeting no one's but presence, parting the hallway like a tide. His assistant whispered, "Should I reschedule the rest of the day?" "Mr. Pierce?" Nathan replied without pausing, "I need two things. A car is downstairs in 3 minutes, and every detail you can find on Pinnacle's branch office immediately." Rachel didn't know he was coming, but he knew every minute she sat there was another minute she told herself she was being a burden. And that was something Nathan Pierce would not let continue. Not for one more minute. Late afternoon in Chicago. The rain had just stopped. A black Maybach pulled up to the curb in front of Pinnacle's office tower. A high rise of glass and steel, every edge designed to scream busyness and success. The car door opened. Nathan Pierce stepped out, dressed in a charcoal gray suit, no tie. He didn't need one. No one looked at his collar. They looked at his presence like a silent storm front sweeping across the pavement. The security guard at the door bowed instinctively. No one had warned him. No one had called ahead. But the man knew the chairman of their parent corporation was now standing at his front door. Nathan nodded once, didn't stop. He walked into the lobby, where employees just dismissed from a meeting were gathered in loose clusters chatting. A group of sales reps adjusted their dresses laughing over a trending video. Someone recognized him, but before they could even say a word, the lobby shifted. Something changed. Footsteps echoed against the polished white stone floor. Slow, unhurried, unmistakably certain. A receptionist gasped almost involuntarily. "Oh my God, that's Mr. Pierce," someone else whispered. "Wait, is that the CEO of Pierce Enterprises? What's he doing here?" Another muttered confused. Something happened. Something definitely happened, but Nathan didn't hear any of it. He didn't need to. Every fiber of his focus was locked onto one image: Rachel. Rachel with her soaked cardigan. Rachel sitting alone in a meeting room, surrounded by laughter and cold stares. Rachel, who once believed that being kind and working hard would be enough to earn respect. No, it wasn't enough, and now he was the one who would put an end to that illusion. The elevator was waiting. An employee stepped forward to enter with him, but stopped when she caught his gaze, backing away instinctively. The doors closed. No music, no words. Even the air inside the cabin seemed heavier. Floor 28. Pinnacle's main office. A soft ding as the elevator opened. Nathan stepped out, one hand in his pocket, the other gripping the phone, still displaying Rachel's last message. Just one line, "I'm still at my usual desk. I haven't gone anywhere." He slipped the phone into his pocket and looked straight down the hallway. No one up there knew that the man now walking toward them hadn't come to ask questions. He hadn't come to sympathize. He had come to clean house. And this time, the storm would have a name. The elevator doors opened. The sound of leather shoes against tile echoed in slow, deliberate steps. Not fast, not slow, but just enough to make the once busy office floor fall into complete silence, like someone had pressed mute on the entire room. Nathan Pierce entered Pinnacle's workspace. No nameplate, no secretary, no bodyguards. Just a man whose gaze was cold enough to freeze the blood in an entire corporate system. Jessica Hayes was leaning against the lounge table, chewing gum while scrolling through her phone. She looked up, saw Nathan, and froze. Her jaw moved once more, but the gum slipped from her lips and hit the floor. Mark Reynolds was joking with Lauren Kim near the printer. When he saw Nathan, his smile vanished and his hand instinctively adjusted his collar, the reflex of a man who knew he'd never done the right thing when it mattered. Lauren nearly dropped her phone, eyes wide, like someone watching a business icon step out from the pages of Forbes and into real life. No one dared speak. No one knew why Nathan was there, but everyone felt that something serious was about to happen. Nathan didn't look at anyone. He didn't need to. He already knew where she was. Rachel sitting at the far end of the room, still wearing that same cardigan. Her hand gently tightened around her bag strap as if she knew he was coming. He walked straight toward her, and when he stood in front of Rachel, he didn't ask if she was okay. He didn't ask what had happened. He just said one sentence, calm but loud enough for those nearby to hear, "Are you ready?" Rachel nodded and rose slowly. She didn't say a word, but just one look at her face told everyone watching she had waited a long time for this moment. That's when Jessica finally found her voice. She stammered, took a step forward, her tone rising to mask the trembling underneath. "Mr. Pierce." "Hello, sir. I'm Nathan." Didn't look at her. He kept his eyes on Rachel. Then slowly, he turned to face the entire office. His voice wasn't loud, but it didn't need a microphone. "Which one of you thought you had the right to humiliate my wife? My wife." Those two simple words hit like a blade, slicing through every false facade in the room. Jessica stood, frozen. Mark took a step back, mouth half open. Lauren gently lowered her phone onto the desk, her fingers trembling, as if she feared the camera might still be recording. Brian Foster, the team lead, stepped out from his office, adjusting his tie with a forced corporate smile. "Mr. Pierce, there must be some misunderstanding. We have the utmost respect for Rachel. Maybe a few colleagues were a little unprofessional," but Nathan raised a hand, cutting him off. "I didn't come here to negotiate. I came here to end it." The room fell into total stillness. Nathan turned back to Rachel and gently placed his hand over hers. He didn't pull, didn't squeeze. It was just a quiet reassurance. "From now on, you don't have to endure anything alone." Then he said, "Let's go." Rachel nodded. She didn't look back. She didn't glance at a single face. But just before stepping into the elevator, she paused. Not to look at the ones who had humiliated her, but to look at those who had seen it all and stayed silent. Her gaze wasn't angry. It simply asked one quiet question. Did you ever consider that silence is its own form of complicity? The elevator doors closed. And from that moment on, the office of Pinnacle was never again a place where cruelty could hide behind a smile. The elevator doors closed behind Nathan and Rachel. Just a soft click, but in that instant, the Pinnacle office froze. No one dared type. No one breathed deeply enough to make a sound. Jessica Hayes stood rooted in the center of the room, her mouth slightly parted, caught mid-sentence, as if frozen in place. Mark Reynolds still had his hand on the mouse, but the screen in front of him had gone dark long ago. Lauren Kim stepped back instinctively, eyes scanning the room as if praying someone would laugh and say, "It was just a prank." No one laughed because there was no room for jokes anymore. In the far corner, Emma, the young intern who had only joined last week, stared at the elevator doors, wide-eyed. She had once dreamed of working at a prestigious firm with gleaming floors, brilliant colleagues. But today, she witnessed something else entirely: the cost of silence. Behind the glass wall, Brian Foster stepped out of his office, walked quietly to the water dispenser, and poured a glass. His hands were shaking so much that the water spilled over the rim. What had he just witnessed? A declaration, or a sentence passed in a voice too calm and a gaze too unwavering to ignore? Around the rest of the office, people started looking at each other. Just moments ago, they were laughing, recording, choosing to stand still. But now, that stillness no longer felt safe. A colleague murmured, "The chairman." That was Chairman Pierce. Another replied in a whisper that sounded more like a confession, "And Rachel, she's his wife." The moment those words left his mouth, it didn't just startle those who heard it, it stripped away the pretense. Because the truth was, they all knew. They had always known who Rachel was, but chose not to ask, not to confirm, not to care. Because in this place, people were measured by brand-name shoes, designer bags, and LinkedIn followers. And now everyone remembers her grey cardigan. And the moment she bent down to pick up a pen, no one reached out a hand to help. A young employee near the door whispered to a colleague. He asked who here thought they had the right to humiliate his wife. The other swallowed hard, and no one answered. Like survivors after an earthquake, every pair of eyes was quiet now. But inside, foundations were collapsing. They didn't yet know what Nathan would do next, but they knew the worst was still to come. 11:37 a.m. An email landed in the inboxes of every employee at Pinnacle from the executive office of Pierce Enterprises. All Pinnacle executives and managers involved with the employment of Rachel Carter are to report to the conference room on the 26th floor at 14:00 today. No explanation, no extra words. Jessica read the email, and her face went pale. She stood up and hurried over to Mark. "We need to do something," she whispered. Mark replied flatly, "Have you cleared the Slack messages yet? What about the cameras? Did anyone record that incident the other day?" Lauren leaned in, voice tight. "I deleted my video, but the internal network probably archived it." No one said anything more, because the moment Nathan walked into that space, they understood one thing with terrifying clarity: there would be no room to shift blame. Only time to choose stay silent or throw someone else under first. Brian shut his office door, making frantic calls to regional leadership. But the only answer he got was, "You should worry about writing your own statement first." In the executive command room at headquarters, Nathan Pierce sat reviewing extracted footage. One clip security angle from the 21st floor Friday. Beside him, a staff assistant laid out a printed packet compiled from Pinnacle's internal Slack logs. A message from Mark: "Looks like our little finance princess might disappear soon." A meme Jessica once shared in the group chat, Rachel's face photoshopped with the caption, "Low-tier peasant detected." A private thread between Brian and Lauren. She doesn't fit the company culture. Yeah, can't fire her yet though. Let the team handle it. Nathan read it, closed the folder. No expression. Then he issued instructions, each word as precise as a scalpel. Temporarily revoke their internal email access. Archive all digital communication involving Rachel Carter. Send everything to the independent investigation system. He turned to Lucy Graham, the company's head of global HR. You'll coordinate the 2 p.m. meeting. I won't speak. I'll just observe. Lucy nodded, but hesitated. You're giving them a chance to explain. Nathan's voice was clipped. I'm giving them a chance to destroy each other. Down on the 21st floor, the behavior among Jessica, Mark, and Brian shifted rapidly. Some started drafting early apology emails. Others were busy identifying who had been standing nearby when it happened. One quietly reopened an old phone video and deleted it. Whispers spread across the office like sparks in dry grass. They're under investigation. Word is, the chairman flew in himself. This time, no one's walking away clean. 200 p.m. was closing in. But no one truly understood. Yet what waited in that 26th floor conference room wasn't just another meeting. It was the first time they'd be forced to face what they had all chosen to scroll past. 26th floor conference room, 1:58 p.m. 4 people were already seated. The regional executive director, the global head of human resources, the internal affairs supervisor, and Brian Foster, who was trying to hide his trembling hands by mindlessly scrolling through his phone. At exactly 2:00 p.m., the door opened and everyone stood. Nathan Pierce walked in. No assistant, no laptop, no folders in hand, just a pen, and eyes sharp enough to draw a straight line through steel. Apologies. The executive director spoke first, his voice tight. We truly didn't expect you to come in person. This must be a regrettable misunderstanding. Nathan said nothing. He took the central seat, tapped the tip of his pen on the table 3 times. I have 3 questions, he said, voice calm and even. First question. A female employee had soda poured on her in front of several witnesses. No one stepped in. No one reported it. Why the room was silent. Internal Affairs flipped open a notebook. Brian swallowed hard. No one could speak. Second question. Another employee was filmed being humiliated. The video circulated internally. She didn't fight back, but that doesn't mean you had the right to laugh. So, are those who laughed still sitting in this room today? Silence again. The executive director furrowed his brow. We haven't conducted an investigation at that level of detail yet, sir. Nathan looked up for the first time. I have. He placed a slim folder on the table. No one saw where he pulled it from. I have screenshots, chat transcripts, and security footage. Do you want me to read out loud the names of everyone who laughed, the mockery they typed, the emojis they added? No one answered. Third question. Nathan leaned back slightly in his chair. If Rachel weren't my wife, would any of you even be sitting here today, not because she was the chairman's wife, but because she deserved protection, even if she had been nobody? Nathan stood. I won't fire anyone today. I want each of you to spend one night thinking and ask yourself when you look in the mirror tomorrow morning, will you still see a person or just a hollow business card? He walked out, leaving behind 3 questions and a room full of people who no longer knew where an apology should begin. The next morning, Pinnacle's 21st floor no longer felt like an office. It felt like a nerve checkpoint. No one dared play music. No one dared make coffee too loudly. The air felt like someone was tightening a fist around the entire floor, tight enough to choke. Brian Foster arrived at 6:30 a.m., a full hour earlier than usual. But not to work. He was there to prepare his defense. By 9:00, an internal email was sent out not from Nathan, but from Brian himself. As requested by upper management, all employees involved will be required to submit written statements. However, we must clarify that this was an isolated incident and does not reflect the overall culture of the company. A sanitized way of saying it was a few bad apples. The system is innocent. Jessica read the email like she'd just swallowed barbed wire. Damn it, he's trying to cut us loose. She pulled out her phone and messaged Mark directly. Jessica, you need to say it was all just jokes. Everyone knew that. Why are we the only ones getting blamed? Mark, I'm deleting everything. Don't text me again. Jessica cowered. If I go down, you're coming with me. Meanwhile, Lauren stayed quiet. She hadn't slept since the night before. She reopened the video she had once taken of Rachel being humiliated. Back then, she thought it was golden content. Now, she saw a woman trembling, but still refusing to cry. Lauren quietly deleted the clip. It was too late, but at least she didn't want to keep it anymore. 10:00 a.m. Upstairs in the executive suite, Nathan received the first batch of findings from Internal Affairs. A thick file of internal messages, including Brian once emailed that Rachel doesn't align with company culture. Mark forwarded a photo of Rachel's desk to a group chat with the caption, "Housing Project Vibes." Jessica is using her personal account to share the clip on Slack with the tag, "She had it coming." Nathan said nothing. He simply turned to his assistant. "Is the press release draft ready?" "It is, sir, but you haven't confirmed which names will be listed publicly." Nathan leaned back in his chair, eyes closed for a moment. "Let them talk a little more. I want them to tear each other apart. On their own." Back downstairs, Mark pulled Jessica into the hallway. "We need to agree on what we're saying. If we don't, we're all going down. Agree on what I'm not admitting anything. Don't be stupid. You were the one who poured the soda on her, and you kicked the chair." Lauren recorded the video. Brian looked away. "Don't you dare dump this all on me." Their arguing echoed softly down the corridor, but office walls are thin. Inside, just feet away, Emma, the intern who had once stayed silent, was standing by the door. She heard every word, and for the first time, she opened her email. Typed a subject line, "I was a witness, and I'm ready to tell the truth." Emma's email was sent at 10:43 a.m. to Internal Investigation Division. CC Nathan Pierce. Subject, "I was a witness, and I want to tell the truth." The message wasn't long, but it was enough to make a seemingly calm office begin to tremble from the inside out. "I am Emma Tran, an intern at Pinnacle since April. I witnessed Jessica Hayes throwing a soda can at Ms. Rachel Carter last Friday. I saw Mark Reynolds kick her chair. Lauren Kim filmed it and laughed. I didn't speak up because I was afraid. But today, I'm afraid of something else. That if I stay silent, I'll become one of them." The moment the email hit inboxes, it was like the oxygen got sucked out of the building. Lauren was the first to read it. She gripped her phone so hard, her knuckles turned white. A second later, she jumped up and ran into the restroom. Jessica slammed her desk, her voice trembling with fury. "That little intern, who does she think she is?" Mark threw up his hands. "Stop yelling. The more you scream, the more guilty we look." Meanwhile, in the executive suite, Nathan nodded calmly as the email appeared on his screen. "She's telling the truth," he said. "And she's the first one who dared to admit a truth that doesn't benefit her." His assistant asked, "So, who do we go after?" First, Nathan didn't blink. "Let them all read the email. Bad people don't fear punishment. They fear the moment the silent ones start to speak." Emma, unaware of the chaos her message had set in motion, sat alone in the small intern's room at the end of the hall, typing a second email, this one addressed privately to Rachel. I don't know if you'll read this, but I'm sorry for seeing it all and saying nothing. And thank you for standing up. You didn't say a word, but you taught me that silence is a choice, just not always the right one. By noon, the Pinnacle office was split down the middle. One group huddled together, whispering nervously, eyes darting toward the HR department. Another group sat in silence, deleting photos, clearing chat histories, changing Slack display names, unfollowing each other on LinkedIn. Jessica sat alone, face blank, but her nails had dug so deep into her palm they'd drawn blood. Mark was already on the phone with his private lawyer. Lauren stared at her screen, unable to type a single word. One by one, they were called into HR for clarification. And during the lunch break, another email was sent, this time from the Regional Executive Director. Pierce Enterprises will officially engage an external firm to investigate Pinnacle's internal culture. During this process, all personnel involved will be placed under temporary suspension. 26th floor executive office, 2:03 p.m. The air in the room was so cold you could hear the sound of someone swallowing, clear and sharp, from the back row. As the door shut, Lucy Graham, Senior Director of Human Resources from headquarters, placed a thick folder on the table. No one knew what was inside, but everyone could feel it. A trial was about to begin. No one will be terminated today, Lucy began. The words sounded merciful, but no one exhaled. But that's not a reprieve. It's time. What I need from you now is for each of you to choose how your own story ends. A large screen flickered on. At the top, a single line, Pinnacle Culture Review, 72-hour self-audit. We're temporarily freezing all internal emails, Slack project management tools. Everything will be archived and analyzed. Every laugh, every emoji, every meme sent. You'd best remember before the system remembers for you. Jessica sat frozen. Lauren kept her head down. Mark clasped his hands tightly between his knees. Brian shot up from his seat. This is ridiculous. This is a workplace, not some kind of criminal investigation. Lucy didn't even turn to look at him. It was Nathan who spoke calmly from behind the desk. His voice wasn't loud, but it landed like a silent detonation in a sealed room. Then you admit a crime has been committed. Brian went rigid. Lucy continued. We won't pass judgment today, but over the next 72 hours, each name on the preliminary list will submit a handwritten statement, no lawyers, no assistants, addressed directly to me and Chairman Pierce. Any report that contains blame shifting goes straight into the termination file. And then, as if dropping a bomb into the center of the room, Lucy closed the folder. Enjoy your 3 sleepless nights. Just before the room could adjourn, Lucy's assistant quietly handed Nathan a slip of paper. He glanced at it, gave a single nod. Only one line was written: 21st floor camera. Friday night. One segment flagged. Nathan slipped the paper into his pocket. He said nothing, but in his eyes, a flicker of something sharp had just lit up. 900 AM floor, 17 main conference room. Lucy entered carrying a box of hard folders. Inside were stacks of blank paper, handwritten covers, and standard blue ink pens. No Word documents, no Google Docs, just something no one could edit after signing their name. 3 days, one handwritten statement from each of you. No ghostwriting, no typing, no blaming, she said, placing the box on the table. Any statement filled with excuses will go straight into the termination file. Jessica raised an eyebrow and gave a dry smirk. HR must be really bored. What is this high school detention? Mark nodded, muttering under his breath. Lucy probably thinks we're going to break down and cry. Brian, however, was different. He smiled too, but tightly, not for more than 2 seconds. His hand gripped a personal notebook a little too hard. As everyone filed out of the meeting, Brian was the last to leave. Before shutting the door behind him, he looked back at Lucy. "You sure about this? Making it a big deal could cost you good talent." Lucy didn't even glance at him. "We don't need talented people. We need decent ones." Meanwhile, in a shadowed corner on the 30th floor, Nathan sat alone in front of a monitor. On the screen, surveillance footage from the 21st floor, timestamp 1738. The moment the chair was kicked, the paper was thrown as a prop. A cruel smile was captured in full, and one gaze missed by everyone. Rachel's eyes locked on the back of someone turning away. Nathan paused the footage, then typed a short message to Lucy. "Let them finish writing." 9 a.m. Thursday, turn the screen on. No additional words. At her desk, Jessica began writing. Her handwriting curled elegantly. First line, "I sincerely apologize if my behavior was misunderstood." Mark scribbled like copying notes in school. Lauren hadn't touched the pen. She stared at the blank page for what felt like hours, as if waiting for a voice to tell her how to begin. Brian wrote quickly, furious strokes crossing things out ink, pressing so hard it bled through the top page. After the first paragraph, he paused, pulled out his phone, and reopened the old group chat with Jessica and Mark. Then typed, "If there really is 21st floor camera footage, we're done for." No replies, because the others were typing the exact same thing. As Rachel passed through the hallway carrying a stack of documents, no one said a word. No one smiled. But with each step, she took a few eyes, glanced away. She didn't look at anyone, just stopped at the window at the end of the corridor where sunlight slanted across the floor. She placed her palm gently on the glass and whispered, "If they write the truth, for the first time in my life, I won't have to say anything." Then she turned and walked out of frame, leaving only her reflection behind, faint but lasting, light but impossible to erase. From 8 a.m. onward, scattered emails began trickling into the HR department's inbox. Same subject line regarding the written statement, but the contents wildly different. Lauren wrote, "I didn't directly do anything to Rachel. I was just nearby." Mark claimed Jessica led the whole thing. "I thought it was all in good fun." Jessica insisted no one was near me at the time. Everyone else was busy with their own work. 3 statements, 1 incident, but they read like 3 alternate timelines of the same disaster. If you didn't already know the truth, you'd think Rachel had been hurt by confusion itself, as if ambiguity had pushed her down and poured soda on her. 9:00 a.m., floor 24. Brian walked into the tech room, voice low. "I need access to the 21st floor surveillance system." Paul, the technician, looked up mid-bite of his protein bar. "You don't have clearance. I'm the operations supervisor, and I've been instructed by the chairman's office. No one touches last week's footage." Paul emphasized the words chairman's office, the way a soldier might mention central command. Brian left fuming, but powerless. Elsewhere in the city, at a quiet cafe, Lucy sat across from Nathan. She laid 3 printed statements on the table. Nathan didn't flip them open. He simply asked, "No one took responsibility." Lucy shook her head. "Not yet. But these 3, they're contradicting each other already." Nathan nodded slightly, then opened his laptop and inserted a silver USB. On screen, the 21st floor security interface. He didn't hit play. He just let the monitor idle on a single still frame, a faint blurry image of 4 figures standing around a woman soaked in soda. Lucy stared at it for a long time. "Do we release it tomorrow morning?" Nathan replied. "Let them spend one more night slicing each other apart with their own pens." Night day 2. Mark messaged Brian. "Didn't you tell Jessica to make her quit on her own? Do I remember that right?" Brian didn't respond immediately, but eventually replied, "What are you implying?" Mark pressed. "Just saying. I was following orders." Brian replied tersely, "Orders from who? I don't record meetings." Back at her apartment, Lauren stared at her statement, pen in hand, unmoving. She opened Instagram, scrolling to a photo from last month's Pinnacle staff party. Rachel was in the frame, barely, standing at the edge, blurred. No one had tagged her. Lauren closed the app. "I never even said her name right." Tuesday ended in silence, but not the kind of silence that brings peace. The kind that stretches across the surface like early river ice, smooth thin, waiting for just one final step to shatter everything. Tomorrow would be that step. 900 a.m. 30th floor main conference room. The lights were on. The curtains were pulled wide, letting the morning sun flood the space. Everyone was there. Jessica reapplied her lipstick as she sat down. Mark buttoned his cuffs. Brian pretended to study his notebook. Lauren stared at the hem of her skirt hands, clutching it tightly. Rachel wasn't present, but she was on the screen, frozen in the moment she slumped over the copy machine last Friday. Drenched, silent, alone. The video began. No one spoke as the hiss of the soda can echoed. No one spoke when the chair was kicked. No one spoke when Jessica slid forward the fake termination notice. And no one had words when Brian was shown standing 5 meters away, watching, then turning his back and walking off. Lucy stood. Her face was unreadable. 4 statements were submitted. 3 said they were just nearby. 1 claimed, "I don't recall clearly." But this footage, it doesn't speak in ink. It speaks in truth. She paused, then gestured to the screen. This is the 21st floor camera. Unedited, uninterrupted, pulled directly from the company's security network. We cross-referenced every word in your statements with every frame in this footage. Nathan still hadn't spoken, not until Lucy handed him the USB. Only then did he step forward. He didn't need to reply to anything. He simply picked up the 4 written statements and laid them one by one on the meeting table. "This is what you thought could outsmart the truth." He looked directly at Brian. "You concealed the footage." Then to Jessica. "You forged a termination notice." Then Mark. "You kicked the chair." Laughed. "Did nothing." Then Lauren. "You recorded it, posted it, then deleted it." Nathan paused. "And all of you wrote your own sentences the moment you believed a quiet woman was a blind one." No one replied. Only a faint ping from Mark's phone broke the silence. An email from HR: "Please vacate corporate premises before 12:00 p.m. Jessica looked around. Her eyes were turning red. I thought she'd just quit. I didn't know it would get this serious," Nathan cut in. "She almost did. And I stopped her. Because if everyone walks away every time they're humiliated, then the worst people will rule every office." Brian stammered, I have a right to legal counsel, and I have the right to terminate your executive contract today," Nathan replied, without blinking. Lucy stepped forward, her voice steady but firm. "This footage will be released internally. Everyone at Pinnacle will know what happened. And they'll also know, for the first time, Pinnacle chose to stand on the side of what's right. Rachel never walked into that room, but everyone could feel. She had just walked out of a storm and left behind a system finally learning how to face its conscience. The next morning, every employee at Pinnacle gathered in the main hall on the ground floor, a space once reserved only for Christmas parties and shareholder seminars. Today, there were no banners, no projector screens, just a single microphone and a row of plain chairs set on the stage. And Rachel Carter stepped forward, wearing a simple light grey suit, her hair tied back, no makeup, no notes. She didn't carry paper, no screen glowed behind her. It was just her, alone. She looked out at the hundreds of eyes in the crowd, some red-rimmed, some are looking away, some frozen, unblinking. She spoke, "I didn't come to this company for the money. I came because I love data, because I enjoy analyzing the things no one else pays attention to." She paused, calm, steady, and over the past year, I've noticed many things that no one else paid attention to. Side glances in the hallway, emails without CC, chairs that disappeared, and laughter that echoed when I walked by. Her voice didn't tremble, but there was a resonance, like someone who'd spent a long time holding herself together just to stay standing. I used to think maybe I did something wrong. Maybe I wasn't good enough. And then I thought, if I just quit, it would all end. But the scariest thing wasn't me walking away. It was walking away and knowing this would happen again. To another girl, someone new, someone else who chooses silence, like I once did. She looked toward the new managing director, then toward Lucy. "I'm not speaking today to demand justice for myself. I'm speaking because I want us to remember no one has the right to normalize humiliation, and no one has the right to turn silence into a weapon." She bowed her head, just slightly. "Thank you. Because today, I don't have to explain who I am anymore." As she stepped down the hall, stayed silent for nearly a minute. No one signaled. But slowly, a wave of applause began. Not loud, not forced. Just the sound of a collective apology for a woman once dismissed as just a data assistant who had carried within her a lesson bigger than any marketing campaign. 1 month later, Rachel didn't return to Pinnacle. She launched a consulting service focused on corporate culture, not to teach people how to say nice things, but to help them stop using silence as an excuse to hurt others. Nathan stood behind her as he always had, not stepping in front, not speaking on her behalf, never claiming her voice. Final scene. Rachel stands in another auditorium. This time, she's addressing a leadership training session for young executives. A student raises their hand. "So, what would you do if someone disrespected you in public?" Rachel smiled. "I once said nothing, and even now, I don't need to shout. Because silence, when it comes at the right moment, is a sound no one can silence. There are stories that don't need to end with applause. There are victories that don't require anyone to fall. And there are women like Rachel Carter who never have to prove anything. Because the way they stay silent, rise and walk away, is proof enough." This story isn't just about bullying. It's about the culture of dismissal, about how a system can quietly push someone to the edge with nothing more than smug chuckles, whispered remarks, and strategic silence. Rachel didn't scream. She didn't seek revenge. She simply waited for the truth to speak for itself. And sometimes, truth doesn't need to echo. It just needs to arrive at the right time, loud enough for those who once believed they stood above others, to finally face their own reflection. Nathan didn't rescue her like a hero. He simply saw her worth when the world refused to. And the most powerful form of protection is the kind that comes from someone who understands no one needs to be saved, only respected. That workplace cruelty doesn't always come from those who yell, but often from those who know exactly what they're doing and do it anyway. That dignity doesn't need to be granted, only guarded. And that justice isn't someone got fired. Justice is when the girl who was once laughed at stands, and the entire system has to change. At Toch Story, what do we believe? We believe in the right to exist without having to justify it. We believe that gentleness is not weakness, and we believe that even if you've stayed silent in the face of injustice, you can still speak up. Right now. If this story made you think, if something stirred in your chest, then share it. Tell someone who's ever been treated unfairly, I stand with you. And if you want to keep walking alongside stories that make you reflect and stand taller, then follow Toch Story, because we tell stories so that no one has to suffer alone.